Hi everyone, Stepan here. In today's daily chess test, I have two positions which are all about plans and thinking about the position, finding the important factors in the position, and finding correct active plans is going to help you solve them. Now, it's not the variations you are looking for today. It's not a one move solution that you're looking for. You're looking for a plan which is either unstoppable or B, will force your opponent to some sort of a concession. Okay, so let's start with the first position. Excuse me, they are in reverse. The first position is actually Gashimov-Mamedyarov, not Janovsky-Rubinstein. So this is Gashimov-Mamedyarov from 2008. It was a rapid game, so you can forgive the players for imperfect play. Okay, it's white to play. Find a good plan for white. Pause the video. The rules are on the screen again. Solve the position over a real board. Time yourself, 15 minutes per position. Don't move the pieces and write your analysis and your ideas down. Okay, pause the video. See you in a minute. Okay, in this position, there are two extremely important things to note, and one which is important but not as important as the other two. The two most important factors in this position, which sort of work together once you spot them, are the very bad bishop on d3, which is basically doing nothing, has no active squares for the moment, and the light squared weaknesses in black's position, as well as the weakness on e6, which is black's biggest weakness for the moment. Now, why is that important? Well, if black should at any point exchange on f5, that would mean two things. Firstly, black has a dreadful pawn structure with these three horrible pawns and this isolated pawn. It also means that as soon as black takes, the white knight gets the d5 square, which is very important and could be crucial in this game. The knight on d5, of course, looks towards black's king, looks towards the f6 pawn, and could bring a lot of trouble. The other thing that we need to know is if black should at any point push e5, that means that again the knight gets the d5 square almost without any consequence. Also, any exchange with bishop to c6 and takes on d5 would makes white pawn structure great, and he could think about activating this bishop on d3 with moves such as a4, breaking open the position, and now using the fact that black is missing his light squared bishop. So there isn't really that much black can do about the weakness on e6, so either e5 or ef are both bad moves. So bad bishop, weakness on e6, light squared weaknesses in black's position. And the third thing that's very important, that's not as important as the first two, but still very important, is black's activity on the g file. And in many positions, with moves like a3 or maybe rook to g5 and then doubling rooks, black could be able to get a tremendous amount of pressure and then maybe think about the move e5, weakening the g2 pawn and infiltrating. So those are the important factors. However, black's counterplay is not as quick. Okay, so knowing all of this, hopefully you found the correct plan for white. Now, I've struggled to find several good plans. I just couldn't. I only found the one plan. And if you try to play defensively, thinking that black cannot do anything and play a move such as h3, then of course rook g3 is a very strong move. If you try ideas like g3, then maybe black can exchange and infiltrate on h2. If you try to solidify your position with moves like rook e2, then maybe bishop c7 improves the position, then maybe rooks get doubled, the rook comes into g4, maybe then d5 is played, maybe the knight is loose. So even though these moves, such as rook e2 or maybe even a3, giving your king luft and preventing b4 are not bad, they aren't really active moves that do something for white's position. So, combining the factors that we know, the correct way to play this position and the correct idea is to simply get this bishop to b3 put pressure on the diagonal and force black to do something about his e6 weakness. Now this plan is not winning. This position should be roughly equal if black plays correctly, but I thought it was extremely instructive and beautiful to see how you can utilize your weakest piece and black's biggest weakness at the same time. So in this position, Vugar Gashimov, playing white of course, played the move c3. Okay, now let's look at black's options. The reason I told you you shouldn't really be looking at too many variations is because they aren't as important as in other games, as in other positions I've shown you thus far in the tests. I think realizing that this is your plan is enough and you should give yourself points for this. Let's just look at immediate consequences of black trying to win a pawn. So takes, bishop takes, queen takes check. Asking you, why did you play the move c3? You just weakened yourself. Well, you play king a1, and basically black has so many weaknesses, and the knight is now a monster, much better than this bishop, that white is close to winning despite being a pawn down. For example, h3, trying to undermine your structure, you can just continue g3. And unless a rook comes into g2 and this knight is traded off, there's really no downside. For example, rook e8, takes. You don't want to take here because you get mated, but you can see that white's position is much better. Alternatively, I think black's best is rook to e8, just solidifying his structure, and then white continues bishop to c2, maybe now ef5, but now you have this annoying move knight d3 and attacking the queen, and this is a line which I had to calculate when I was looking at this position, and it goes fe4, rook e4, and I thought queen c8 was best, but now you can just continue rook d4, and again everything starts to fall apart. Maybe bishop to c6 attacking the queen, queen f1, and white again is better, but I still think rook e8 was the best move. Alternatively, rook g5 is okay. Again, you continue bishop to c2. And now ef5, bishop f5, you have this move rook d4, and again white has a lot more activity. This pawn structure is bad, the knight could come into d5. There isn't really enough counterplay along the g file yet. Here's what happened in the game. Mamedyarov played bishop to c7, which is a good move. Bishop to c2 was played, and now queen e5 was played. Queen e5 is a slightly mysterious move. And I didn't mention this sort of plan for black, but it's also a very double-edged move, and it misplaces the queen, and it also means that white now has the option to limit counterplay severely. So one of the ideas is d5, and of course double pressure on the knight, but it really isn't as scary, and there isn't really a way for black to go about that successfully. In the game, Gashimov played g3, which I don't think is the best move. I think the best is g4, because en passant is impossible. If you take en passant, then the queen is trapped. You lose the queen. So after g4, there's basically no counterplay. h3 is impossible, because I take it. And next I'm going to play h3 and continue with my play from there, and maybe play knight h5 to prevent you from playing d5, and again go for the same thing, just go bishop b3 and take on e6 and weaken your position. So g4 was a good move. He could have also continued rook e2 perhaps, but he played g3. And now this defends the knight, of course. d5 has been prevented, queen c5 played, just going back, and now g4. And now we get a very similar position to what we looked at with g4 straight away. Bishop c8 was played, and now h3 was played, solidifying. And at this point, white is already much, much better. And queen e5 played again, knight h5, and the bishop didn't even come to b3. Black resigned before that, but the idea was clear. So I thought this position was very beautiful, and I hope you did manage to find the plan. Okay, now let's look at the second position. Once again on the screen they are mixed up. I made a mistake. This is actually Janowski Rubinstein, and this position, this exact position, features one of Rubinstein's most famous moves. And yeah, pause the video. Again, exact variations are of no importance here. this is an equal major piece endgame in which you have to find the plan which is going to complicate your opponent's game. Okay, so pause the video, find a good plan. Okay, this position, although seemingly simple, is actually very hard to play, and at least for me, I'm going to be honest, it was extremely hard to find anything here. So what can we say about this position? I think there are two very important things we can note here. The first one is there's pressure on f3, but this is the one weakness, and following the principle of two weaknesses is not nearly enough to win the game. In fact, white probably has enough time to play f4 and liquidate. The second very important factor in this position, which is much harder to see, is the a file. And the a file is a battleground that's not yet available for either player, really. It's semi-open, and white has no way to occupy it because he loses the pawn. Black has no way to occupy it because it's semi-open on white's side. However, the plan that Rubinstein found here is, well, plays for the a file, but the plan is so subtle that Janovsky, who was a great player, had no idea what was going on. I would bet anything that he had no idea what was going on. So, I don't know what you found. I would love to hear your thoughts on this position in the comments. But Rubinstein's idea was simply this. This looks insane, sounds insane when you hear it, seems impossible to execute, but how do you actually prevent it? So here's what happened. He played queen d8, and since black's pieces are facing towards the king's side, maybe queen g5 was, in Janovsky's mind, the intended idea behind queen d8. So he played queen g4, preventing that. And if you play queen g5, then it's a draw. But queen b8 played, and I can only imagine what was going on through Janovsky's head at that point. He played king g2, which is okay. Queen a7, rook f to e1, defending the rook. Queen a7 was attacking the rook. Queen c5, and now he probably saw what was going on, and he played queen e4. The idea is queen d3, queen c3, queen b4. Now if white does nothing, and again, the position is still perfectly equal. It's all zeros if you ask the engine. None of this really matters. But since we are humans, a plan like this should be instructive and should mean that by this point, even though the engine says 0, 0, 0, 0, if you had to bet on who is going to win, you'd bet on black, because black actually has a winning idea, has an idea that could bring him the advantage. What's the idea? a5, a4. If you take it, your structure is ruined, and black just probably infiltrates on the a file. If you don't take it, then black takes on b3, excuse me, at some point, and then plays rook a8, occupies the a file. Now, none of that is forced. There are ways to stop that, but it's an active plan that, if white fails to stop, will give black the advantage. Rook 1 to e2 was played, which is a good move, because in some positions, if the queen should move, for example, if you play here, then I could just take, and then you lose. So if you take, I take, and take here. Maybe it's still a draw, but at least they win a pawn. So rook 1 to e2 is a good prophylactic move, just preventing any tricks with rook takes f3. And now Rubinstein improves. He plays rook to f6, rook 5 to f6. So in advance of opening the a file, he prepares rook a8 without his rook on f5 hanging. Queen to d3 played, and now king to g8. This does two things. Firstly, prevents any infiltration along the f file if it should open. Secondly, if f4 should be played, any rook e8 can be met with king f7, which means that rook e7 is not possible. And yeah, it's just a safe move. It also brings the king closer to the center, which is very important. And now queen c3 played. a5. And now, at this point, again, the position is still equal, but white has the opportunity to make a mistake, which again, according to the engine, shouldn't really be that bad, but from a practical perspective is much harder to play after that for white. So Janovsky took the queen, which I would never do, I think. Instead, I think rook e1 is a good move, fighting for the a file, and now if black takes, this really should be equal. Maybe b6, because now once the rook is on c3, white is actually threatening the move c5, blowing open black structure, and white could be better, so you have to play b6. And now maybe rook e4, maybe rook a8, h4 blocking the king side, rook f to f8 preparing to fight for the a file, king h3, h5, maybe rook e1 preparing to fight for the a file, a4. You don't have to take it, of course. You can play rook a1. And now maybe a3, and this is a way to get an advantage, or a practical advantage. This was my analysis of what I thought was the best outcome. Still, this probably should be a draw. But in the game, Janovsky took, and now it's very hard to play. He played the move c3 because it's of course impossible to play rook e1, rook a1 in time. If you do anything else, if you play rook e1, I just play rook a8, and obviously black is much better. So there's no doubt about that. So he played c3, which is a tempo move that allows him to maybe play rook a2. Now, after bc3, which black had to play, otherwise white plays rook a2, doesn't take the pawn, rook a2 is not good enough, because this was the idea, no doubt, but rook a2 is not good enough because black plays c2, and now this rook is forced to defend the f3 pawn, so you have to use the a2 rook, and it doesn't matter if you use it now or in the next move. If you play rook a1, then a queen and play rook a8, so you'd best take it now, and now rook a8. And after rook a8, again, black has achieved what he wanted. It's not that there's no counterplay for white. He could play c5, but black has the a file, so that's something. In the game, after c3, bc3, rook c3 was played, and now rook a8. And again, a huge practical advantage for black. King h3, b6 played, king to g4, rook a1 infiltrating, rook b2, king h7 played, b4, and now white's only source of counterplay, well, white has two sources of counterplay, the weak c7 pawn and the c5 break. If white gets in c5, then he's fine probably. And again, this position should be very close to equal, but Rubinstein did manage to win. I'm just quickly going to show you how. I don't want to get into too many details here. I wanted to show you the critical position. So here he played h5, king g3, rook g1. He won this pawn, but it's still very hard to win this position. And after king f5, king d3, rook f3, king d4, he played an excellent move here. And this, after this, I believe it's over. He played rook to b3, and this forces b5, after which c5 can only be played if white's rook is on a7 and black's rook is on e7, d7, or f7, because there's a pin. Otherwise, you never push c5, you have no counterplay and you lose. So rook f2, and now the rook came back, and this is exactly what happened. He played c5 here, d6, and of course Rubinstein won this position convincingly. So coming back to the starting position, finding this plan is genius level endgame play. Even though, I mean, once you put this in the engine, it doesn't even say that something, it says all zeros. But for humans, once something like this starts happening, once something like this comes to your mind, then you know that you got good at chess. Okay, hopefully you got something from the two positions, even though they were not exact, they were not like find the variation and win. But I think there are too many positions and too many exercises where you have to find the winning tactic or the winning move. I wanted to give you something different, and I hope it helps as well. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for more chess. See you later. Bye-bye.